Well, good morning and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to do something a little different. I want to talk to you about an idea that I've had. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh no, not another one. But this is a big idea. I think I know how we can completely revolutionize the energy industry in the UK. How we can completely turn it on its head, reduce costs of energy for everybody, and make a real impact in people's lives. Sound like something you might be interested in? Well, your job today is to tell me all the reasons that it won't work. Let's get into it. UK government policy for the last decade has been about building more nuclear power stations. Now, we're still installing new wind turbines, we're investing in research into tidal, but really our energy policy has been based around nuclear power stations. Sizewell C, which is a new nuclear power station that's planned to be built out in Suffolk, is going to cost an estimated, and I say estimated because the price has doubled and they haven't even started building it yet, £40 billion. That doesn't include the cost of running it, shutting it down and cleaning up the site when it's finished, and disposing of the waste. Now, what could we do if we had £40 billion to revolutionise the UK energy sector? Let's assume that there are roughly 4 million social housing units within the UK. Now, I know not all of those are owned by councils. In fact, about 1.6 million of them are council owned. The remainder are owned by various housing associations across the country. But generally, and this is a horrible generalization, but I think the people who live in those houses are those that probably struggle the most to meet their energy bills. So we're going to do something to help them. We're going to outfit every single council and social house within the UK with solar panels. Those that can't have them fitted directly to the house, whether they be flats or high-rise buildings, then their allocation will go into a solar farm in a field. Now, this is going to sound crazy. So before we do that, let me get Yogi out the boot. We'll go for a walk and I'll tell you how I think this can work. Let's make another assumption. Let's assume that we're going to fit out 4 million properties with 10 panels per house. Now, whether that's 10 panels directly on the roof or 10 panels per property in a solar farm. But every single person living in social housing in the UK would get a 4 kilowatt solar system that they could use to power whatever they like in their house. Now, I know a few of you are already screaming, that's socialism. Well, yes, it is. It's socialism with a capital social. But there are benefits for society as well. So let's say we start this project today. Well, the first thing we're going to need is 40 million solar panels. 40 million solar panels, we need a factory. We need a lot of factories, in fact, to be able to manufacture them. Now, if we had a government with a spine, what they would do is go to all of the manufacturers of solar panels worldwide and say, you can get in on this project, you need to build your factory here. So not only would we generate or regenerate the manufacturing capabilities within the country, we'd also employ vast swathes of people in the renewables industry. But it doesn't just stop there. You think about a factory that produces solar panels and all of the other things that feed into that, all of the chemicals, the materials, the food for the canteens, all of that helps generate and stimulate industry throughout the country. Now, here's the next thing that would come out of it. Once you start building these solar panels, you need people to install them. You need solar panel installers, people to go up on the roof. You need electricians. You need people to be able to drive the vans, to move the equipment around. All of this would stimulate jobs across the country. In fact, to install 4 million homes, that's probably 1,000 teams working solidly for 10 years. So there would be vast job opportunities for people to train and qualify in this industry. Now, what happens once this is all done? It's all installed. There's obviously going to be work to maintain these, to make sure that if people need, new inverters, all of these kind of things, that they all get looked after, because these are a national asset. They don't belong to the people that live in the house. The people that live in the house benefit from them. The electricity that is generated, they can use it. But anything that exports goes back to the country. Now, you remember when the Labour government came in recently, they set up something called Great British Energy. Have you seen any benefits from it? Have you seen your energy prices come down because of Great British Energy? So far, it's been a waste of time. But this really could become Great British Energy. So all of the energy that we would export, because these houses don't have battery storage. Obviously, if people want to invest in their own batteries to store it, they absolutely can. But all of the power that gets exported can be used to charge up grid level battery storage. Things like the Norwich power station, the pumped hydro stations, could use this free electricity to store the power in the grid for when it's needed. But what about everybody else? Now, while this is all happening and we're fitting out all of the social housing with our 4 kilowatt solar arrays, what about the rest of us? Well, some of us have already invested in solar, but what about everybody else? The fact that we would have all of this capacity in the country would drive the cost of solar panels down. Obviously, if the government's going to be paying for them, we're going to be paying for them through our taxes, then we want them to be built as cheaply as possible. This is why there shouldn't be, or there should be very minimal private ownership here. All of the profits from this go back into the country. The country then takes that money and reinvests it. We're not paying shareholders to take large dividends and run away with our money and take it abroad. But everybody else would be able to get in on this. Instead of paying overinflated prices for panels and inverters and maybe battery storage, the costs of those would dive. And that means that everybody else, everybody who's been sitting on the fence saying, I wish I could afford solar, well, you would be able to now, because it would be readily available. We would have hundreds, if not thousands, of companies out there who would be able to do the install tomorrow, and the capacity would be there to be able to supply it at a reasonable cost. So the Sizewell C power station is estimated to produce approximately 3.2 gigawatts. Now, that sounds like a lot of energy, but when you're thinking about an entire country, it really isn't. Our total load from nuclear is about 9% of our actual capacity that we use every single day of the week. How much would 4 million houses with 4 kilowatts of solar on them actually generate? Well, to be honest, it's almost impossible to model, because without knowing all of the roof aspects, the shading, and all of those things that go into a calculation for solar, we're just taking a guess. But ChatGPT's best guess is somewhere in the region of about 3/4 of a terawatt. Now, that's significantly more than we would get out of a single nuclear power station. But we're not going to get that permanently, because solar in the winter, even though it's a sunny day like this today in January, isn't going to produce a huge amount of power. So this doesn't mean we're going to give up all other forms of power and just rely upon solar. Otherwise, winters would be a dark and miserable place. But it does mean that we would have a massive capacity of power for 80% of the year. And it would also mean that people would stop worrying about their energy bills. We could have a completely independent energy market. We wouldn't need to pay for energy the same way or at the same price that we pay for gas. Not only would all this extra power go into the grid, it would mean there would be an excess of power available in the grid. And for everybody else in the country, that would mean, because there's an oversupply of power, that the cost of the power that they're having to pay for would come down. So benefits all around, as far as I can see. Now I'm sure there are a million reasons why this can't work. And I'd love for you to just take a moment, pause the video, go into the comments and tell me why this couldn't work. Other than the only one I will not allow is political will, because we know most of the reasons that this kind of thing does not happen in the UK is down to lazy politicians who are thinking 4 years ahead. They don't care what the policy is, they just want to make sure that they get re-elected in 4 years' time. So political will is disallowed for this particular argument. Imagine a situation where electricity was in such abundant supply that it was so cheap that it would bring industries to the country. We would be able to be a net exporter of energy. Instead of having to import energy from France and from Norway through the interconnects, we would be exporting our spare power because we would have so much of it. And because we would have this enormous industry that is building solar panels, building inverters, training electricians, we would be able to do more and more of this, to the point where every single person in the UK could be benefiting from this in the space of about 10 years. So again, I ask the question, why aren't we doing something like this? It's not difficult. All it requires is a bit of forward thinking on behalf of, our ministers in charge of us who supposedly know what they're doing and are not just worrying about getting re-elected in 4 years' time, to actually say, we're going to do this. We're going to invest in this technology because it will have a benefit for the entire country, not for shareholders of companies, not for large energy conglomerates, and certainly not for foreign countries that are building our nuclear power stations only because they've been given a guarantee by the government that we will pay over the odds for that electricity for the next 50 years. So that's my big idea. Will it ever happen? I absolutely doubt it, because unfortunately, government doesn't think like this. Government doesn't think about big projects. It thinks about things that will get them sound bites and it will get them elected at the next election. I'd love to see our government thinking beyond 4 years. So what if they're the ones that instigate this, but some other government, some other political party ends up taking credit for it in the future? It will be as a benefit to the nation. There are a huge bunch of social benefits to this that I haven't really thought through. But simple things like children should not be growing up in the UK going to bed hungry or living in a cold, damp house. If you were not worried about the cost of energy, if you could turn on the heating in your house because you weren't frightened that you were going to run out of money and you wouldn't be able to afford other things, I'd like to live in a country like that. I really would. But imagine the knock-on effects. If children are not growing up in damp, cold houses, maybe they're not having to take as many days off school. Maybe they're not having to go to the doctors, and the NHS isn't having to treat symptoms that really shouldn't exist in this day and age. There are so many second and third order things that I just haven't had a chance to think through, but I just know this would be a vastly positive thing for the country. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment below. Right now, I got to focus on walking this boy because he's getting way too far ahead of me. This has been rolling around in my head now for a number of months, and I really can't see a reason why not do something like this. As a country, we've kind of forgotten about the big ideas. We invest money into small scale or large scale but utterly ridiculous. HS2, I'm looking at you. But what happened to the UK of the past, where we did big things? We looked at things and said, we can do that. We could do this. We're not going to, but we could do this. Anyway, I've talked for long enough. I hope you found this interesting. If you have, hit that like and subscribe, and I'll be back real soon with another video. Take care. Bye-bye.